Now we've been through more things about FilePro, and we should be getting to this section, define output, but once again I'm going to defer and move on to another section before we get to define output. I have my reasons, and I hope they become clear eventually. For now, we're going to move to what is really the essential heart of FilePro, define processing. I've been talking about it throughout all the introductions to this tutorial, and I'm constantly talking about it on the net and so forth. I really love FilePro's define processing abilities. It's a kind of a thing. I'm going to pick VG. This is customers, the same file that we've always used. And now I'm in the first screen that you see when you decide to define some processing in FilePro. Now, what is processing? A processing table in FilePro is a little program. It says, I'm going to write a little program in a special language, FilePro's own language, and I'm going to run this program against my data, or against a file on the operating system, or against anything. You can run these programs against anything, but generally, FilePro processing is run against the records in your database. A FilePro processing table will run generally against one record at a time, and it will run through all the code on that table until it's done, and then it will go to the next record you've selected to be processed and operate on that record, and then it will operate on the next record and the next record until it's done with all the records you've selected for that particular processing table. Now, what do all these mean? There's automatic processing, input processing, output processing. The change file just means if I press 4, I would just see all the files on the system and be able to change to another one. But I'm going to stay in VG Cust for now. Automatic processing. This is a very early incarnation of processing for FilePro. It's been around since day one, obviously. I've pretty much all the processing. Is it absolutely critical to use automatic processing? Generally not. I was employed by the authors of FilePro back in the early 80s during FilePro's heyday, and I had the honor and pleasure of helping to design FilePro, or at least be queried as to how I thought it should be designed from time to time, and I gave my input whenever I could. And there were several of us at the company, including some of the head designers, that felt that eventually automatic processing could even be done away with entirely. There is an area of people, a school of thought that says you can write pretty much everything you need to write in FilePro without automatic processing. It does some very important things, and you can write some fantastically cool stuff with it, but you can also get away pretty much without ever using it. Because of that, I'm going to leave automatic processing till a little further on in these tutorials and not talk about it now. Number 2, here's input processing. What is input processing? Input processing generally is the processing that occurs when people are entering data or updating data on a record. They are inside or using or working through the input processing table, meaning they're inputting data. That's sort of what its overall name was meant to mean. Output processing is really just a way of saying, I want to run this processing when I'm generating some output, maybe printing a report or printing forms or labels, or it can be just, an output process can just be a table that acts upon your data and changes it in some way, manipulates it. And let's say you write a processing table that you just want to change every dealer in your system who you want to give them 1% more discount. You could write a table that goes to every single record and finds every single dealer record and adds 1% to their whatever their discount already is. It doesn't print any output. It doesn't generate any forms or labels. It's just a processing or a little program you wish to run against your file, against some databases, or against one single record or whatever. Output processing is generally run against a series or a selection of records that you've picked. You may want only the companies that are based in New York. Pick those records, and that's what you run output against for some reason. Output processing generally runs against a collection of data or a collection of records that you've picked or selected, or an index full of certain records in a certain order, whatever. Input processing runs generally when you're entering data. I mean, 99% of the time it's on one record at a time. You're standing on that record, you're pressing U to update, and you're moving around the record doing things, and all the things you do are controlled and absolutely manipulated by the input processing table. That's what the basic three things are. One, we're going to skip and talk about later, automatic. What does it do? We'll talk about that later. Two, the type of processing you write when you're entering data into a file. Three, output processing, everything else. Things that get, all the processing that gets attached to reports, to forms, to labels, or to process only formats where you're just running a process against your file to manipulate the data in some way.